So today we're going to be talking about when you can switch lenders. So I get this question a lot, and as you guys know, if you watch my channel, I spend way too much time on Reddit. Way too much. It's like it's my guilty pleasure, right? Ice cream and Reddit. Anyways, and what I see a lot of is I'll see people where they're like, hey, I just got in contract. Is this a good rate and loan? And people are like, no, you're getting ripped off. No. And they're like, okay, well, can I switch? So let's talk about that now. So before I start, I'm a mortgage lender licensed in 48 states. My team's one of the top purchase teams in America. We take a lot of deals from other lenders for situations like that. So switching is something that we deal with pretty much every day. There's always someone that can be rescued or a situation going sideways, and we're happy to step in. So let me tell you when we would step in and when we would not, and what you need to consider. Okay. And if you have questions, or I know I haven't memorized it. If you have questions or want to text, hey, this is what I'm getting, 786-933-2077. It's a new number for me, but my team gets it as well, so we can respond quicker. Okay. If you are supposed to close within 7 days, unless the seller's going to extend your closing, it is not enough time to switch. Very important, okay? Now look, the easiest loans to switch lenders on are VA and FHA. The reason VA and FHA are the easiest is because the appraisal can easily be transferred to the new lender, right? And sometimes with VA, because we do a lot of this with VA, because there's a huge lender that everybody goes to because they have really good marketing, but they really rip people off. So we take a lot of business from them about 2 weeks before close. And with VA, you basically send them a template, like we give it to you, and it goes to the lender. It says, hey, transfer my appraisal over to XYZ. And they do it. And if you ever have a lender, because you're like, my lender's not a big lender and they're kind of sleazy, Jen. I don't know if they're going to transfer it. We can get VA involved. FHA, they're supposed to transfer the appraisal as well. Easy. Conventional is a little trickier because there's all these rules that an appraisal has to meet in order for one lender to be able to use another lender's conventional appraisal. So conventional, we would want to see if it's possible, in terms of timeline. With a conventional loan, with VA, with FHA, do I think 14 days is enough? Yeah, even with conventional, if I have to order an appraisal, as long as you're not somewhere super rural, 14 days is enough. With VA and FHA, I would assume that if you are 14 days from closing, they already have the appraisal back. If the appraisal hasn't been ordered, you are not closing on time. So we would be stepping in and letting everyone know, hey, this other lender was so incompetent, they never ordered the appraisal. So if you're within 2 weeks of closing, yes, you can switch to another lender and successfully close, provided that the lender you're switching to has speed. Okay. I work for a company called Guaranteed Rate. We are obsessed with speed. We are so obsessed with speed that sounds like a drug thing now. It's not the drugs, guys. Don't go there. Don't go dark on me. There's literally a campaign right now where instead of home sweet home, it's home speed home. I'm not kidding. I know. But look, that's the thing. We can move fast. So that's something you have to ask. So if you're like, well, I'm switching to this other lender, I think, and Jen said that she could do 14 days, ask them. Ask them if they can do 14 days. With VA, I would say the shortest I want is 10. I'll do a 10-day, easy, but I don't want to go less than 10 because you've got disclosures, you've got all this other stuff that comes into play. So really important that you're talking to the lender you're considering switching to about how fast they can move, okay? Now there's another component to this, everybody. Now, one of the questions I get is, am I allowed to switch? It depends. And what I mean by that is, for instance, we've had some people where we've been like, hey, the buyer's getting a much better deal with us. We can do this, blah, blah, blah. we show them the reviews, we show them we show them everything that shows that the lender that they were working with is trash in comparison by both experience, rates, and fees, the whole thing. And we'll hit a real estate agent that's like, no. And you're like, what? No, they're not going to do it. And the seller's not going to do it. And if you have an agent that's doing that, it's really hard to switch, because if the agent that's representing you is saying no, then it doesn't even matter most of the time what the listing agent's going to say, because your contact with the listing agent is the person telling you no. So they're just going to call the listing agent and say, hey, the buyer wants to switch. I told them no. You're okay with that, right? The listing agent rarely is going to go, no, why do they want to switch? Tell me more. They're not going to do that. But hopefully you're working with a real estate agent that actually cares about you getting a good deal. If in fact you are being charged too much and you can illustrate that you are switching to a reputable loan officer and a reputable company, that should be more than enough. But a lot of times what we see is that this real estate agent recommended the lender that's ripping you off. And so sometimes they'll be like, oh gosh, I didn't know, I'm so sorry. Yeah, like switch, I'll make sure it's okay with the listing agent. Yeah, the lender you picked looks great, And other times you get that no. And then you go, why is that rate so high? Like, what's going on here, right? Okay, so really important that you know that, because that is one of the things. Because if I'm stepping in and taking a loan from another lender, now before people go, oh Jennifer, you're so horrible, you take from other lenders. Let me tell you right now, if you are ripping off a buyer, if that buyer comes to me, yes, I am going to try to take them from you. You know why? Because you shouldn't rip off buyers. That's what you get. There, that was my mean Jennifer if there was a snarky lender. Anyways, okay, so the other thing to keep in mind is, look, you've got to have permission. And I say that because let's say we're taking your loan from someone else. I have to reach out to the title company and get the title information. And there's going to be communication that we're having with either title and escrow or title and attorney. So the seller's gonna find out, right? It's inevitable. So in the best case, you have a buyer's agent that's like, I get it, totally cool, let me handle it. And the listing agent goes, yeah, we get it, totally cool, great. Worst case is you have a buyer's agent that's just shutting you down, or the buyer's agent's cool with it and the listing agent's like, yeah, no, we're not taking that risk. And here's the thing, if you're like 7 days before close, if I was the seller, would I want you switching? No. I mean, look, if you could really show me you were getting totally ripped off, I might out of the kindness of my heart. But if I'm buying another house and it's contingent on this one selling, I don't have the ability to have the kindness of my heart. Okay? So here's the thing. In a perfect world, you are shopping lenders, right? If you're uncomfortable, if you're like, this feels high, day 1 of the contract, day 2 of the contract, it's a lot easier to get everybody on board with you switching if it's earlier in the transaction. When it's towards the tail end, it can get a little bit tougher. But I do have to say, I see it a lot. And what I think is interesting, we had a veteran recently, and he was just getting totally pilfered by the lender. It was terrible. It was like $14,000 extra he was paying and a higher rate. It was bad. And, his agent was like, horrified. She hadn't recommended the lender. She called the listing agent. The listing agent was like, wow, we don't want a veteran being taken advantage of it like that. They had to delay the close 6 days, but even the seller was like, yeah, that's wrong. Like, let's help this guy out. And look, they researched the lender that he was switching to, so yes, I had to go through the whole interview process to make sure I wasn't going to screw up the deal. So that's what you need to keep in mind as well, is you're going to have to get all these parties involved. So if you're looking at switching lenders, you got to make sure you're switching to a lender that has some sort of measurable success that can easily be demonstrated, so that all these people, because look, the seller's counting on selling his house to get his money, right? He or her. The real estate agents are counting on this house to sell to get their money. You have money on the line based on this house closing. So if you're going to do the switch, make sure that you are switching to a reputable loan officer. If you're working with, let's say, a loan officer that's a local lender and everybody likes them, and you try to go to a call center where no one knows who the loan officer is, or it's one of the ones with a bad reputation, everyone's going to freak out about that. And they're going to freak out because they're going to think your deal's not going to close. So yes, you can switch, but once you're in contract, people have to agree. And I've seen it where sometimes people just try to do it sneakily, and sometimes it works. Other times it doesn't. So just make sure you're prepared. And look, don't just take a higher rate and fee if you're really getting ripped off. It's a great way to test if your agent actually cares about you and if they have your best interest. Because if so, right, they're going to tell you the risks. They're going to say, hey, look, we should talk to the seller about this. Make sure they're okay with it. If they're not okay with it, then unfortunately you're staying the path, right? And if they are okay with it, great, let's do the switch. But first, let's make sure the lender that's offering you this, A, is legit, B, is really going to give you a better deal, and C, is going to perform. So look, I hope this video was helpful. Don't get trapped by high rates and fees. You can still escape. Just make sure you know that you got to do all those steps. Thanks for watching.